Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 11th episode of Man's Guide to Happiness. And we need this episodes because we need more happy men in the world. So, for today's episode, I have invited Rick with us. Hi, Rick.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Doing very well, thanks. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Okay, yeah, I'm a personal development transformational coach, and what I work mostly with is entrepreneurs, small business owners, and I help entrepreneurs overcome self-sabotage to find their unique voice and increase their income and impact. My background is experiences essentially in two ways. One is background is in medical science and psychology and neuroscience. And I've overcome a number of things in my life, personal trauma. And as a result of that, created a program that helps other people get clear on who they are, what they want in life, find out why they don't have it, and then create solutions around that. So that's not just the information I like to work with, it's transformation. There's too much information out there. And I think people are inundated with videos and internet and all the things, but there's no really map or plan on how to make the changes. And that's what I focus on because I experienced that in my life. And I said, I want something different. And I created some wonderful things. So I want to help others do that.
Yeah, that's a great thing to start with, Rick. I believe in the same thing. There's too much information, and people are just getting information, but they're not taking action, and that's what has that delay, or nothing changes at all because
You're
we're
right.
just getting more knowledge, but just acknowledge is not going to change anything if we don't take action.
No, exactly right. And I think the question is, what do I do? I often would hear that. I've worked with hundreds of clients and patients over the years. It's I don't know what to do, and so that's why when I actually created a program with this. Been using it for a while with myself and other people, and getting really great results because it's really getting clear on who you are. And I think
Mm-hmm.
people think that they don't know who they are, and they actually oftentimes need guidance on that. And I think that's the big starting point. And I think that leads in right into happiness right away. For I certainly can speak to men because I'm quite familiar with work with a number of men, and being one is be clear on who you are. And that question really needs to come internally, not externally. I think too many times we're looking externally for the answers on who am I? Well, who am I as a person? Who am I as a man? Who am I as a woman? Rather than looking internally. And I think once you do that, you make those changes because essentially the happiest people in the world are the people who are leading their authentic lives on who they are. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And happiness is the same way. It's your own happiness. You have to know what makes you happy. Same way,
Exactly.
like knowing yourself, knowing what actually makes you happy.
And I think often what I come across with people is that there isn't a clarity on what that is. And if we think of that, everything we want to be, do, or have in life is to feel good. It's that's all that simple. So it's at that high vibration. Where that high vibration is, that's where happiness is. So those are what I refer to as these are my desires. And when I look at this, I look at what are the areas of life: your career, your finances, your relationships, and you as a person, physically or spiritually. That pretty much covers it all. And sometimes what I see often is there are people who are having success or in one area, but maybe not so much in another area. And so you have to look at the whole picture of your general life, what's working and what's not, and then point to it. You're able to do it here, but you're not able to do it here. And so we really do a lot of looking at and getting clarity on what are all those areas, what's working, what's not, and then we create solutions around that.
Mm-hmm. So, Rick, what when you're working with the men, what are the most misbeliefs that men have about what happiness is?
I think looking outside of themselves for answers. I think today more than ever before, we live in a culture where is at least in this country, not so much in other countries and other cultures, but that is even evolving a little bit too, depending on what it is. So I think you have to take all of that into account. Is this, what culture am I living in? How was I raised? What are my belief systems? That's what it all comes down to. What are my belief systems? And I refer those as also subconscious programs. But I think that the big answer to this is, who am I as a person? Am I listening to myself? I have to look at my background, how I was raised, and put that in context too, and then make the decision that this is what I desire and this is what I want. I don't think today we can say that, certain areas maybe you can, but if we refer to just say people in America, for example,
Mhm.
you have so many choices. And I think still we're living by what someone else or community or family or culture or whatever it is that's telling us this is what we should do.
Mhm.
And what oftentimes I've seen when I work with people is that they're not happy. Men are not happy in certain roles.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
there are men that absolutely should have families and have children, and there's ones that absolutely should not. And
Mhm.
so you have to kind of example what is it that makes you feel comfortable and good, because the bottom line is it's going to eat at you anyway. You may be in living a different life by what other standards people want you to live. But what's going to happen is you're going to also live a life of anxiety, depression, and at the very, very best scenario, what will happen is you will learn to tolerate uncomfortable positions, not because you want them, because they're familiar.
Mhm.
And only then, when it gets to the point where it becomes either two ways people change, either by inspiration, because they say my life is different, I want something different than it is right now, it's pretty good, it's pretty decent. But most often the times, unfortunately, it's desperation can come through a variety of ways. It can come through financial problems, relationships, divorce, uh, just health issues, loss of any kind, grief, accidents, trauma. These are the kinds of things that unfortunately get people to get an awareness. And I think the longer you live as you go over the life cycle, there was actually a book called Seasons of a Man's Life, which looked at how men, particularly in this case, go over time. And what happens is you look at decade markers. And I think all of this plays into that, because I think anywhere between 2 years before or after a decade marker, say 28 to 32, 38 to 42, 48 to 52, on and on, is when we kind of do a reassessment of our life. And what happens at that time is you're looking at, depending on how you did the previous decade period, is how it's going to actually tell you how you're going to do in the next one. Meaning, if you've resolved some issues as you're going on through life, it's going to be pretty easy transition. If you've
Mhm.
ignored a lot of things, say you've been in a relationship that just isn't working for 20 years, then what's going to
Yeah.
happen is there's going to be a big breakdown. If you've been in a job or you've been living in a situation where you don't like, it's going to break down eventually. And what's going to happen, typically what happens is it does fall apart and things do change. Sometimes you just work through the issues and you can resolve to make the transition. But what I do is I also look at that, what if, not only what you're going on right now in your life, but what have you lived through?
For what you lived before.
Yeah, what you've lived through. What have you lived through in your life? And
Mhm.
I think I don't focus on the past, because when I work with people, I say what's really important, essential is we look at what you lived through in your life, but that's not going to become what we're going to look at in the future. Because in the
Mhm.
present moment, you got two things to do. I can look at the memory of the past, or I can look at the future. Which one do I want
Mhm.
to do? I can do everything in the present moment. Most people, much of the time, spending a lot of their energy and focus on negative emotions by looking at the past. Things
Mhm.
didn't work out. This hasn't happened. My life isn't happy. And what it does is that, if you consider the law of attraction in this case, and you're focusing on that, you're going to get more of what you don't want. Circumstances, opportunities, situations, people are going to show up to reinforce all those negative emotions on why things aren't working.
Mhm.
So I think, but what's important today is, more often, I think more so than ever before, Men are, I would say, maybe liberated, and women are too, to actually look and I can be who I want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
I really need to identify, get clear who I want. And then I really don't need your permission. I need your support. And to see if that can be worked out, then I think those changes can be made. And what happens is you live a good, happy life.
Mm-hmm. I believe the same thing about the past, and I teach the same thing that with the past, you think people get stuck on thinking like, if I would have done that differently in the past, which is completely pointless thought because you can't do anything differently in the past. Only time you can do something differently is now for the
Right.
future
Yeah.
and for the future, you know. But in the past, like we spent so much, our brain spends where habits and old, the way the old times were taught, that thinking of if I would have done that differently, and our brain can come up with such a big stories how our life would be different now if we would do different in the past, but it's completely unrealistic.
Well, and you're right about that. I look at this two ways. One is you can look at your life and live in a life of regret. And what that is that's just going to create more again of things that you don't want. Or you can look at the fact that, okay, these things happen to me
Mm-hmm.
and I don't have a life. But what if you looked at all the things that happen were preparation for you to become the person that you can be. You can actualize your skills and talents. You can actually live your authentic life by looking at those experiences. So I tell people, I said, if we reframe that, because I lived through a lot of trauma in my life. When I was young, I
Mm-hmm.
was quite sick. And I can go into the story, and I talk about the story at times. Actually, I've had two episodes of trauma where the second one was where I lost everything. And I think what happens is when you look at all of that, you could be very upset, and you could be angry and have a lot of negative emotions around that. Or I could look at it this way. I could say, how do I transform this, what happened to me, and
Mm-hmm.
reframe it and empower myself? And that's a process, which I've done. I work with other clients to do that. Because otherwise, what happens is, and I still see people do this because it always interests me when I see someone who might be doing some coaching and they're talking about some trauma in their life. And as they're talking about their trauma in their life, there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of sort of thing. And I'm saying, you've not let that go. You're living it today as much as you were before. So what
Yes.
happens is how you know the difference is I can recall the events, but not relive the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And when I could put that in a different context, because you're never going to forget it. It's just we
Mm-hmm.
just, we
Yeah.
just don't. It's just how do I look at it again in a different way, and how I know that that's changed is I could talk about the story without having the emotion and the drama around the
Mm-hmm.
drama anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you've evolved, and that's when you've empowered yourself. And if you want to talk about happiness, that is a very good example of how you can make that transition, and you will feel that happiness energy.
So how do you make that transition with happiness?
Well, if it's a trauma situation, first of all, we do talk about it. And one thing when I talk with somebody about, I want to see the reaction to it. I want to see how much they're really reliving it, and where is that those emotional patterns. And it's different for everyone. But oftentimes, I see people that have never gotten over this. And I've worked with clients, hundreds of clients. I've seen and heard just about every kind of trauma that's happened to somebody, whether it's physical or
Mm-hmm.
mental abuse, go on, the list can go on. So as I really look at that, and then we get into talking about a little bit about the details, because I only want to do this once. What I refer to this as looking at your pain. And what that tells me is that tells me what your belief system is, but even more importantly, is your belief system is your subconscious program. Meaning that since most of us are conscious for about 5% of the day, and 95% of the time is subconscious, you have to keep in mind those programs are playing out in your life and you don't even know it. And how
Mm-hmm.
they're playing out in your life, as I say, look at what's happening in your life. How do you feel? Look what's happening in your life. What's showing up? And then what we do is we go back and I look at those programs, and it always comes back to the CDC and Kaiser Permanente did a study saying 67% of the population has experienced trauma of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Some people know about it, some people don't. They're not aware of it, or they repress it, they push it back, they don't want to deal with it. There's a lot of denial. But the point is, this is exactly what you don't want to do. And I know I've lived through things, and I've worked with many clients that have. So once we identify this, I want to look at the patterns emotional, and I look at the program, and what we do is we work on rewriting it to a new mental program. And eventually, with the work we do, individuals do on that, rewriting the program, different things show up in your life, because now subconsciously, when you rewrite a program, you are a different person. You have to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really exciting to see that when people have that experience, going from identifying as this victim role or whatever this trauma role is, and it's playing out in their life to a new experience and a new identity, and new things play out in their life. And then I think slowly, as they start seeing those things happen and the reinforcement gets, then you start to take this software program and hardwire it, and then life just becomes very different. So it works really, really well. I worked on myself, worked with a number of people on that, and seeing great results.
Mm-hmm. And then you start seeing what are the happy things in your life, because everybody still has a lot of happy things, but they just focus on the non-happy things instead of focus on the happy things in their life.
No, that's absolutely true. And I think one of the key points is, if we're looking at happiness, what is happiness? Happiness is a very high vibration. And I think what ties into that very much so is the word gratitude. And I think people talk about gratitude, but I think it's really a more powerful emotion and experience when you really look into it. Because what is gratitude? It's two things. One, it is a very high vibration. When I focus on a very high vibration and my attention is there, then what's that going to create in my life? If you look at the law of attraction, like things connect. So, and also what gratitude does is really important, is when I'm grateful for something, I'm grateful for something that already happened. I'm very happy for, it could be anything in your life, for your relationships, your career, the money, your significant other, your job, anything. When you're grateful to the universe and say this has already happened, it brings you more of it.
Yes, it does.
So just saying, people say, well, I want to be grateful and say these sorts of things. You really need to understand the power of the whole emotion and the experience. Do that, because think of it this way. If I'm saying that something's already happened and I don't see it in my 3D world, because here's where people get really tripped up. And I've done this, and I catch myself doing this too. I look at my present reality, what's happening in my 3D world, my now reality. And what happens is, it's very compelling because it's very powerful. We see it all around. But if I'm looking at trying to create something I want, and I'm very grateful for this X number of thousands of dollars coming in a month, or I'm very grateful for that new person, or very grateful for this new home or new car, and my imagination experiences it, it has to show up. But if I keep going back to looking at my now reality, what I'm looking at is the absence of what I want. And when I focus on the absence of what I want, the universe is saying, okay, I'm going to give you more of that, because that's what you're looking for. So it really takes some training and focus to change that. But it's an extremely powerful thing. And gratitude ties into that, because, again, it's saying, I'm getting this. I've already achieved this. I don't see it yet. I see it in my imagination. And what people say, well, what does that even mean? Imagination. And I tell them, I say, everything that you have right now existed in someone's mind at one point. And I often use the example of the iPhone. I say, show me an iPhone from 2003 or 4. Anybody have one? Anybody have a smartphone? Let me see it. And they say, no, I don't know what. I said, because there wasn't one. There was no physical phone. So I asked them, but think about it. Where did it come from? Where did anything come from? So if you're looking at something as powerful as that, which changed the way we live, civilization, clearly, and there's other examples of that. I said, if you could think of it, it existed in someone's mind. It existed. That's an example of imagination. So I tell people, every one of you has that same power of imagination to create what you want because you don't see it here. That phone didn't exist. How did it happen?
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing is whatever you're asking for too is going to go through that same process. And it starts with the imagination, the visualization. And I go through the energy of this, of believing that it's already here. And what happens is, so people say, well, where's it going to come from? I said, no, it's not going to fall out of your lap. What will happen, and this is the beautiful part, things are going to show up in your life. The synchronicities, serendipity, the inspirations, the intuition. You're going to get a signal that I need to do something or call somebody, or I'll see something that I didn't see before because it sets off.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about quantum physics in the brain, which I do in other conversations. But when I'm doing that, I'm changing something in my brain, the reticular activating system, actually, to focus on these kinds of things that I want. And this is what's going to show up. I tell people, what's happening in your life is probably happening all around you, and you're not aware of it. You're not connected to it. And this ties all in. Again, why are we doing this? Because we want to be happy and feel good. I agree with you. I think life was meant to be not a struggle, not the trauma and drama. It was meant to be it was meant to feel good and be happy.
Yeah, feel good.
And happiness is not something stagnant like a noun. It's not it's not happy. You pick up a thing and it is all the time. Happiness is something which is going to come up and down. But what happens is, as you do the work and you're aware of who you are and what you want, you are going to notice if you are in a lower vibration or higher vibration. And I tell people too, I said, if you're in a lower vibration, it's okay to visit it, but not to live there.
Exactly.
Because if you think of things like anger and frustration, those kinds of things, people say, I never want to feel that. I never want to be that way. I said, no, you don't want to live there. You don't want that to become your experience. I said, however, if you don't have some of that, how do you know what you like and what you don't like? If you're having an experience that doesn't feel right, there's nothing wrong with it, with that emotion, that contrasting negative emotion showing you what you do want. I mean, it plays out in our life all the time. So if we go to a restaurant and we're looking at a menu, what do? Do you look at, I'm going to focus on all the things I don't like on this menu? No, you kind of want to rule those out, and you're looking for, what is it I like? And then I start narrowing it down. Eventually I pick something. And this is a really beautiful example, because I don't know if this is exactly what I want, but I have to pick something. I said, yes, pick something. Pick something. Because it's always for the desire. What if I pick the wrong thing? There is no wrong thing. And we get those messages that we have to pick, this is supposed to be the right thing. I see this a lot with people too, because we have this perfectionistic mentality that everything has to be perfect. And I say, if you have that kind of focus and mentality, you're never going to be happy, because nothing's perfect. Every time you create it, like if you recreate this video, we could go back and watch this 12 times. I'll tell you what, we're going to make 12 changes, right? Everything's going to change. And the point is, I say, here, let's get rid of perfection. Let's focus on satisfied. That's the focus. Is this satisfying to me? Because what will happen is, no matter what you do, you're going to look back and want to tweak it or change it anyway. But am I satisfied with this at the moment? And that is also a very empowering place to be, because then I can actually accomplish more things, knowing that this is, sometimes we have limited time and resources, whatever, to make decisions. So I just need to make the best satisfying decision I can make with all those factors involved, knowing that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I want to, Rick, I want to point out one way you made an example, and for the viewers, how to look at your life, the way Rick said, has it like a menu, and you have the menu of your life with all the things in your life, and then you start taking away the things that you don't like, and then you pointing out the things that you like in your life.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you don't like, they're still there. You can set some boundaries, and you can completely get rid of those things in your life if possible, or set some boundaries. but focus on those things that you want.
Right. Think of it as going to a buffet. I think we've all been to a buffet, and there's a line of people, usually some people you're with, and they're all going through the buffet and they're picking different things. Well,
Mm-hmm.
why aren't they picking the same thing I want? Because we're all different. So what happens is
Exactly.
when you go to the buffet, two things. You're not going to eat all the food all is there. It's just like I can't eat all the happiness, all the joy in my life all at one time. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
eating all the food I ever want to eat at one time. The second thing is when I'm going there, I'm looking at what I want, and I see things that I don't want. And sometimes you go back, you say, well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But eventually you have to make a decision, you get out of line. But
Mm-hmm.
the person that's next to you, if you look at their plate, it's probably not the same food.
No.
And so the point goes back to, if I look at who I am individually rather than
Mm-hmm.
externally about other people, what they're looking for, I don't need to choose what other people are choosing on the menu or in that buffet. So if we can do that with something as simple as that, then everybody has the capability to do it. What happens is they just need a guide to help them work with it, and they'll be surprised. I see this all the time. See surprised where people are saying, I don't know how to do this, Rick. I can't find this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand this. And I say, well, when we're done, you will. And they do. And it's such a joyous, empowering experience because
Mm-hmm.
they did it. I said, I'm your guide. You did it because, words don't teach, only life experiences do. So if you have that experience, I could tell you about it all day. It doesn't mean anything. It's irrelevant. But when you have the experience, that's all there is, right? If you have
Mm-hmm.
an experience of something, isn't that something very different than me telling you about it?
Yeah, because then you actually know what it feels like and you know what it is. A lot of those things, I think, the same way. People don't understand other people because they haven't experienced it, so they can't relate.
Yeah, no, they can't. They can't. So I said to go back to yourself. One thing I ask people, and let me ask you this: what's your favorite color?
Oh, I have a lot right now. It's gold.
How do you know that?
It's changed.
It doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Uh-huh.
oftentimes, I mean, I ask, and mine's blue. I don't even when I ask
Mm-hmm.
people, what is your favorite color, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll explain to you why that's so important. Is they just answer it.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask people, I said, "Do you ever get to meet somebody and go out to lunch? Say, I really want to talk about why I like blue," and they'll say, "I think I need to go now." Nobody, we don't do that. But the point is, and I said, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is I get, which is a really good thing to do, is they just sit, I don't know. I just know. And I said, that's it. So if you apply that same principle, when I ask people, who are you and what do you want? I often get a blank stare.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that unfortunate? That should be a very simple answer. So if I'm a
Mm-hmm.
man, who am I? Whoever you want to be is a man. That's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would spend more time on that rather than maybe Netflix or texting or social media, you're going to be far happier by doing that. And if you don't know how to do it, get a guide to do it. Because it's not that hard. I think what it is it's unfamiliar. And people are not used to doing that because if we sometimes start thinking about that, we run into all sorts of negative emotions and programs that are running. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be I'm too this, I'm too that, or yeah, but there's the yeah, but statements. I say something, but my family, the way I was raised, yeah, but I don't know how to do this. Yeah, I'm not smart. I mean, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too fat, skinny, or whatever it is. The excuses go on. And I said, once you need to really look at that and let go of, if you could be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, have whatever you want without any restrictions, what would that be?
Mm-hmm.
No negative emotions, nothing in the way. What would that be? And when people start thinking about that and take away all the excuses, then some of the clarity starts to. I said, no, there's no yeah buts, there's no I am too, there's none of that. There's without restriction, none, zero. What would you be? And even if it isn't the exact target thing, as that tells me something about what they want. For someone might say, well, I want to be president. Well, or I want $100 million. I said, well, yeah, those are kind of answers that sometimes people give. And I said, no, there's something in that answer. Well, why don't you have it? I'll say, well, how come why don't you have it right now? We look at that. But there's something in the answer, even if you don't know the exact one, there's a lot of clues that will guide you to find that specific answer. And it's a really great thing. Sometimes I working with one person one time, and I used the example. I said, you're in the right church, but the wrong pew. Meaning he was looking at his career. He was in the general area, but it wasn't right. So he thought he was in the wrong career. And sometimes that's the case. But I said, what if you made these shifts and changes by what you're telling me? And when he looked at that and did that, everything changed. So he was close. He just wasn't there, but he couldn't see it. The forest for the trees. We don't see the forest for the trees. But once you get into alignment, and I refer to this a lot, alignment is simply, I'm in alignment with what I want or what I don't want. I said, once you start being in alignment and focusing on what you want, feeling good, positive vibrations, not negative vibrations, then what's going to happen is this is going to unfold for you. And it's usually going to unfold in ways that you can't imagine. We often think that when we have a desire for something, we know this is exactly how it's going to happen. I'm sure you do. I've done this as well. So now I do is I let go, because the universe has hundreds of ways of making this happen. And I'd have to say probably 95% of what happens to me is not how I think it's going to happen. How it comes to me is not how I think it's going to come to me. And when you train yourself to live that way, more things happen. And it's just a different, great experience. So
I call them adjustments, like life adjustments. Like you have a plan that you think that things will go one way, but it doesn't go that way. It doesn't mean that anything was wrong. You did something wrong. It was just adjustment. Now you have to readjust and see, okay, instead of what I thought will happen, this happened. So now what I do with the thing that did happen, not to focus on it so much of what didn't happen, but focus on what actually did happen.
Well, I agree with you. How I look at that is in two ways. If I have a desire to do something, and what happens, things start unfolding, a couple things are going on. Maybe I'm not ready, and the universe is saying, I'm getting you ready to be ready. So we focus on something, and an event happens, and it's not what we want. We think, well, I'm thinking about what I want. How come this didn't happen? I said, two things are happening. One is maybe you're not ready. But secondly, maybe this is not, say you want to work on a project and you want certain people to work on that have certain area of expertise. And you talk to somebody, you get excited and think it's going to work, and it doesn't work out. Or you talk to somebody else, it doesn't work out. I say, what that's just saying is those are not the people that are right for you. That's all it is. So what happens is when someone gets involved, I'm working on something, and it doesn't click, we don't make a connection, I just say thank you. Thank you. Because what happened is if we would have gotten involved, it wouldn't have worked out. We'd have a lot of problems later on. So what's happening is now I pay attention when that is. I don't get upset or angry. I'm saying, thank you, we're next. And what happens is you're going to go on to the next person. How you're going to know it's the right one is you're not going to keep hitting roadblocks, and it's going to feel right. And I have so many instances in my life where I didn't do this before. Now I do it all the time, and things are just so much easier. It's life.
I have the same situations where I thought it was the right person to do something with, like projects or something. And because in the beginning, you don't know the person yet.
Right.
And then you find out more things, and you see like it doesn't work out. That project doesn't work out with those people. And you just have to learn to let it go.
And sometimes those people, usually you do let them go, but sometimes they may be somebody you want to come back to later.
Yes.
You got to know them. So maybe it wasn't the time to be together. Like certainly we've met people in our life, and you see somebody months or years later, and then you connect with them. Well, time you weren't in the same vibration to do that. And so what happens is as you become aware of that, you connect with people over time. But I usually see this as I need to try something else. I need to try someone else. Or what happens in some instances, this whole concept of what I'm going after is not working out. And the universe is
Mm-hmm.
keep showing me that I keep running into stumbling blocks. And this happened to me actually recently. I was looking for a group of people to help me with some media thing. And I just had to give up the whole concept of that component of it. And then I thought, wow, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking elsewhere. See, because what happens is when the right things come to you and you're in the right vibration, that's very important. If there's something I really want, I believe it's done. I'm very grateful for it. It's going to show up. It's going to be effortless.
Mm-hmm.
There's no struggle. There's no pain. There's no misery with it. You can have disagreements and differences. So I work with people that I really love to work with. What happens is you have different people and they have sometimes different opinions, but the flow of that is just very different than something where you're butting heads and there's criticizing. That's a whole different experience. And how you know that is just basically how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention.
And that is the flow of life.
Yeah.
Because some of those people as well, they might not be the right person, but they might lead you to that right person.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point too. Yeah, it's when you get connected to something, like say you want to go to an event, and I always set an intention. What do I want to do with this event? Say I want to go to a networking event. I want to meet people that are like-minded, that we could connect to on some level and see where it goes. And what happens is I will meet somebody there who turns out, like you said, may not be the right fit, but they may know somebody. Or I had something recently where they were not necessarily the right fit, but I met somebody else there who was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never met them before. And I didn't know anything about them. So you follow up, you start talking and go, whoa, the reason that I was sent there to this experience was to be open-minded to who is the right fit. And not say, oh, I'm talking to you. Okay, you got to be the right one. No, that isn't always the case. So I think what I refer to this as being conscious. Once we become very conscious, which is only like 5% of our time, then what we could do is two things. One is we could look at what our subconscious programs are, but we also become more aware by using that part of our brain, which is focusing on what we want. And then our awareness is when that shows up, and when that doesn't show up, we know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
It's a very powerful thing to experience.
Mm-hmm. Oh, when you were talking about that way for viewers to see, like, how do you create something in your life, and if you have some kind of idea in your life, like you gave example of the smartphones.
Right.
I was just sitting outside a few days ago, and it was raining and thunder and lightning, and I was thinking back all the way in the time when like Edison or Tesla, like they were like without electricity. So somebody was looking at those lightning things, and they were trying to figure out how to put that lightning or that energy inside of something to make it artificially. So that's just so mind blowing that somebody was somewhere tried to figure that out inside their head, and then they figured out, and now we just flip the light switch.
Yeah, and you don't have to understand how it exactly all works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It didn't take the people to figure out right away, because the way I know a little bit of that history was Tesla and Edison, they were both working in the same time in a different ways to try to do it, completely different ways to do it. And they all had so many years and failures.
Yeah, but they did have many. But what happened is what they did is they used. Here's what they did is when I work with people, I get them to understand this. You use a really key word, energy. And when I talk about energy and levels of consciousness, people get a little confused or overwhelmed at first. I said, no, I'm going to make this clear because you're experiencing this every day and you don't know it. If we refer to energy, if you think of it, one of the brightest minds that ever lived was Einstein. Einstein said energy is not philosophy, it's physics.
Mm-hmm.
So we are physics. We are energy, and when we understand how we use our energy, what our energy is, it's essentially our emotions and feelings. It's not really that complicated. And if you study some of these people, like Tesla was one, and Edison was one that clearly used their subconscious programming. They knew how to do that. They understood how to take there's two areas of there's four areas that there's alpha, beta, theta, and delta are consciousness. I mean, that's people don't understand, maybe know all that, but you experience it all the day. When you're waking up in the morning, when you're going to sleep, you go through all those four phases. But you also have, betas, which we are in right now. That's awake stage. And that's where we spend much of our awake time, clearly. We also go into alpha. Alpha is also a calm, it's an alert but calm phase. Mm-hmm. So the reason I bring those up is if we look at the two areas, and this is what Edison and Tesla did because I've studied them, they understood how to use alpha and theta because those are the doorways to the subconscious. And why I talk about that, what you're programming. So when we get into your programming, I get you into exercise the behaviors to utilize the same thing they did. Now, I don't know what other people think, but I think they were pretty successful. Mm-hmm. And what happened is they did not let what didn't work happen. They kept focusing. Mm-hmm. They had both in their mind exactly what I said. They had the gratitude that this is done. This has happened. This is real. It's not showed up in my life at all yet physically. But what happens is it will, and I just need to go through the process of understanding how to use my programming, understanding energy, and it will show up. And they've had massive successes in many areas of their life. And I know people that do this too. Clearly, we know there's some very well-known people that do this. And there's a number of people that do this that don't talk about it or share it. But I know some of them, and I know this is why they're successful. Mm-hmm. They are understanding, essentially, I'll just leave it at this. If you could understand how your personality was formed, where did it come from? How did you become who you are? I said, if you can understand the formula on how you got your personality, the principles on how that was created, and once you understand that, you now have the power to create anything in life you want to do. And it's not that hard. You just need guidance and you need some clarity and experience. And that's when I work with the people. I say, I'm going to get you to understand how you got the way you are so you could be somebody else. Because when I talk about that is if you want to have all these different things in life, you have to create a new identity. Because our personality is made up of our personal reality, which is essentially our thoughts, our belief systems, our programs. So if we want to recreate that, let's do that. Let's use our imagination to create it. Then let's bring it into our 3D world. And when you have even a tiny experience of that, you get goosebumps. And when I work with people, I love seeing that. I love them having that experience of go, oh my God, this happened. Where did this come from? And they're not used to it. So they kind of stumble around a little bit. I said, get used to it because this is creating a new life. And what happens is they understand positive and negative emotions. They understand what their guidance. The guidance system is simply your thoughts and your emotions. And then when we reprogram yourself, you have a new identity, and life is very different. I mean, sometimes drastically different, where you don't even oftentimes. I mean, I look back at the person I was. I don't even recognize him. I don't even know who he was.
Mm-hmm. Drastically, I agree with you. Drastically different.
Drastically different.
Your personality, your life, everything around yourself, your family, everything will change.
And I think in the meantime, what we do is we live, that's living life by design, where I am becoming aware of how I got created, how I could create a new reality, how I can create a new identity, how that's going to happen, what's the process. It's not that overwhelming. It's not that mystical. You just don't know how, but this is what the stuff I teach. But most people don't do that. They live by default. What's living by default? Well, whatever happens, happens. And how many times have you heard that? Well, I'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is you're giving your power to the external world. Everybody is making decisions around you for you. Mm-hmm. And basically you become essentially like a puppet. And if sometimes that may work for you. I'm not saying some of the things that I was raised in a European tradition, strong European. My mother was from Europe. And there's some wonderful things, values that I really love, and there's some things I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Yeah.
I am not doing this. I am not this person. But the beauty of it is there's kind of both pieces. And I don't know, maybe your life experience is the same, where there's some things where you were raised with that really empower you and give you joy, and there's things that you question and say, this is not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
You made those changes. I'm guessing that happened with you.
Mm-hmm. I exactly like that. I was born in Estonia.
Hmm.
I moved here later on in life, and I learned the same way, exactly same principle. I was from my culture. I
Right.
wanted to keep the things that I like and
Yeah,
get rid of the things that I didn't like. From
exactly.
American culture, I wanted to accept the things that I like and not accept the things that I didn't like.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
that all comes back to full circle to what we're talking about is, what is the happiness? The happiness for, if it's for a man, it's for a woman, it's essentially, in these instances, it's the same thing. It's, am I living my authentic self on who I believe a man is for me? Not for you. It's going to be different for everybody. We're not going to pick the same food out of the buffet. What
Mhm.
happens is I respect that you pick your food and I pick mine. And I think it's really important that we respect each other's decisions and
Mhm.
support each other in what those decisions. I don't would never tell a client, this is the way you need to live your life. This is what you should do. I say, I'm going to help you discover who you are, support you on that journey as you have the experiences to change the identity from the old person to the new person, and then watch it and have fun, because
Mhm.
it's going to be fun. It's going to
Mhm.
have bumps, but I tell you what, you're going to be far happier by being you're going to be far happier by being who you are than struggling against the person that you're not, living by some external standards or belief systems or voices. Once you tune those out and live to truly who you are, you're probably going to lose some friends and be around some different people. But that's good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
You want to be around the people that are in your community, because people are there to support each other. As you make those changes, you always wish everyone well and treat everyone well. There should be no resentment, or anything to other people that are different. Uh,
Mhm.
but you're going to align yourself more with, well, isn't that true that we become the people we surround ourselves by most, and that's true.
Mhm.
So be careful who's in your intimate circle. You don't need a lot of people. It's not the quantity; it's the quality.
Mhm. And the more happier people you have, the more happier people will want to be around you. And if you're a happy person, you're already attracting happy people to come towards you.
That's absolutely true, because what you're doing is when you're staying and living in that vibration, higher vibrations, what happens is people are going to come into your existence that are that way. So I attract
Mhm.
people that are good people and happy people and feel good. Now, you can't control the people that come into your life, because you're going to be out and about doing things and you're going to run into a number of people. What happens is, I've noticed, is when those people come to you that are not on that vibration, they're going to try to get there, because the misery love company kind of thing. And
Mhm.
I've had people tell me that too. I'm
Mhm.
having this conversation or engaging with somebody, and it's very negative, and I don't like it. I said, you can't control that you two met and or talking. You can control your vibration. They don't have any control of that. You have the power to say, I'm not going to let you do that.
Mhm.
And what happens is you just get out of that situation, end the conversation. I don't stay in conversations that are like that. I just find a way to appropriately to either end the conversation or exit that situation. And there's no reason to be in it. And because, negative people like to bring you in, because, oh,
Mhm.
and they can also be very, very critical. There's no reason. That's their issue. And if they don't want to change, then that's okay. But you don't have to be around. We can pick and choose the people we want to be around. And you're right. You also attract the right people.
Mhm. I have some other questions for
Yeah.
the end as well. I have a few other questions for the end as well I want to cover. But before we do that, let's talk about for a little bit about how people can actually contact you. All the for the viewers, the information is all in descriptions as well. But what do you want to tell the people how to contact you, or what do you contact you about?
Yeah, I'm going to give you my website, which is actually a landing page. My email is right there. And there's also a questionnaire if people want to answer some questions and want to talk with me personally. But it's I'm gonna say it first. It's myrewiredmind.com. Yeah, there you go. It's
Mhm.
myrewired mind.com. When you go to that site, you're going to see my email right there, and you could just send me a message, ask any questions. If you are interested in getting some more further assistance, there's a list of questions on that questionnaire, and that will give you a guide on whether you need to do something more personally. And be happy to. And then what that will do is lead you to that we will have a conversation. We'll get on a call, no obligation, seeing if this is a good fit, seeing if you want to move forward. But I do tell you, with the people that I accept and work with this program, we are not going to get more information. You're going to get transformation. And
Mhm.
I've had results with a number of people I've worked with,
Mhm.
and I have testimonials and things like that, because I know people want to share that, because people really want to connect with someone that is authentic. They want to connect with someone that is actually, can you help me? Or you focused on me?
Mhm.
And and if I can feel comfortable with that, because we know that trust in a lot of situations is in short supply. And what happens is, I understand that. And that's why I say, let's have a conversation. And we're both gonna have a feeling about that. But I will tell you this: if you want to have a different life, live a different life, have a different experience, um, let's talk, and I will explain to you and give you some examples of how that works, and then kind of get you clear on where you are right now, what you need to do, and whether you
Mhm.
want to do that or not. At least you're going to know by the end of the call. So yeah, thank you for
Mhm.
asking.
Yeah. And I want to point out what you said again about the information and actual transformation,
Mhm.
because I've seen other like, people who teach about happiness. I've been like, because I study happiness as well, and
Right.
I've been in workshops when the person talks about all the information about happiness, and then they go along saying how unhappy they are, what's wrong in their life, and all the things like, okay, so now you know all this information, but obviously knowing all this information didn't change anything in your life. You're still unhappy. So for
Yeah,
me, it doesn't make sense. Like, well, I understand the idea and everything because they just study the information, but they don't have the feeling. So for me, the feeling was before. So I consider myself like I was born happy, but I learned how to teach that to other people. I
yeah.
had to like learn how to. For me, it was like, why aren't other people happy? So I had to study why are other people are not happy and how to have them the same feeling. So that's the transformational part.
That's the transformation part. But I've been to countless workshops, 1, 2 week long workshops over the years, endless numbers. And most of them were, and people have this experience too. I'm sure most everybody who is
Mhm.
listening to this has had the same experience where I go to something, I feel good for the day, or I feel good for the weekend, or I feel good for the week, and I come home in 24 to 48 hours, I'm back to the same person. Because there was no transformation. It didn't happen. Rarely. And this happens even with talk therapy, because I'm a psychological counselor. I work with people. Insight therapy is not necessarily going to make long-term change. It may be helping situational change, but what happens in long-term change is the process of, and this is what people who sometimes give these talks and things like that are just trying to show somebody how much they know. I don't,
Mhm.
who cares about that? I,
Mhm.
what we care about is result. Take what you know and show that in my life. All I care about is results for me. It's not,
Mhm.
people don't pay for the hour, they pay for the outcome. What is the experience that I can get out of that? And since I had that over time, I said, I never want to do this again. And I never want to work with somebody to put them through that. So, yes, we have conversations, and yes, you get some information, but there are clear assignments and there are clear experiences
Mhm.
that you do and that we track and we work with.
Mhm.
And that is only when you are going to be able to know the difference, is when you
Mhm.
have that experience, and hold your hand along the way. And I'm tell you what, you're going to have. I often hear people tell me these guys, light bulbs are going off. I said, yeah.
Mhm.
So what that does is once we can harness that and turn it into an action, and again, what kind of action? I just want to end with this. Too many people are looking to be motivated. And I don't want to work with motivation. I want to work with inspiration. The difference is motivation still has a degree of resistance in it. When I'm
Okay.
inspired to do, here's the thing. External motivation is I don't want to get a ticket, so I'm going to obey the law. And there's nothing wrong with it. Motivate, these kind of things are important in life. How do we live without it? Internal motivation still has some resistance. For example, is well, I work at a job and I better get this done if I want to keep my job. So, or I need to clean the garage because I told myself I was going to do what's on my goal list. I don't really all that excited about doing it. Inspiration is when I combine my belief, my desire of what I want, and my belief to do it work together. That's where your thoughts and feelings come together. I'm inspired. Like the work that I do, totally inspired.
Mhm.
This is not work for me and I'm not motivated. I just love it because this is who I am. And when I work with people, I say, once you can alter those things in your life to be inspired, and if there's something that you need to do, you can't get done, can I delegate it? Do I really need to do it? Is there another way that this can I can get it done? Or is there some way I could find myself to be inspired out a way to do it by really connecting to my why, not a reason, but my why. And then what happens is it's a very different experience. It's a very different energy, and you enjoy it. It's not like
Mhm.
it's not
Mhm.
it's not like running uphill.
Mhm.
It's totally different. So yeah, I think that's really important. First of all, to be aware that you're doing that or not doing it, and then what is the action that I need to take. And it's just like I said, it's just such a fun process that way.
Mhm. And I think as well that one thing that you focus on is like emotional patterns, and
Yes.
I think that's what it is as well. People are the be not being happy is already their comfort zone.
Yeah. So to get out of that, what I do is my program is based. I talk about here's a simple analogy. If you have a GPS system, we all basically do. What's the first thing it asks you to do? Where is it you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing it's going to ask, whether it's Siri or anybody else. So I look at it this way: where do I want to go? Where do I want to go in my career, my financial relationships, me as a person, physical and spiritually? Where do I want to go? Then the next thing it asks you is where you are. I
Mm-hmm.
tell people, I said, okay, think of it. Where are you now? What does that mean? Not physically. Where am I in my life? What are my belief systems and programs? Once you identify that, then I say, once we identify that, then what happens? We can map out a route from going to where you are to rewriting the program to get you where you want to be. And what's going to happen is there's no straight line because sometimes there's detours. But what we do is I explain how that works, and it's a beautiful thing. And when I refer to the emotional patterns, I use 5 P words. Prosperity is what we want because it's not just money, it's a way of living. How I create
Mm-hmm.
my environment or my life to live is prosperous because everything is prosperous feels good. And the first where we start is pain. What I refer to that is I refer to that as your subconscious program. This is how you're operating your life where you're not getting what you want. And then I go into the other 3 P words are passion, power, and purpose. Passion simply is we have to think of 2 things. There's 2 things that are going to make changes in our life, and it's all energy. Passion is simply feelings, my emotions. What are they? Passions exist in your body. Remember, 2 things. The language of the body is feelings and emotions. The language of the mind is thoughts. So that's power. People often talk about mindset alone. I say mindset alone will not get you what you want. I'll prove it to you. I'll show you to. Because if my thoughts, which are extremely important, don't get me wrong, have to be connected to my passions. So my thoughts, my head, and my thoughts and my feelings need to be connected. And once that desire and that belief come together, everything changes. So that's why I refer to as purpose. What is my purpose? My purpose is my why and what I do anything for. Why do I do anything? And my why I do anything should come from a place of inspiration, not motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always the bigger why. And I talk about the bigger why too. I say, we always have the biggest purpose and why. Yeah, that makes sense because who am I? Why am I here? That's one of the questions we all ask ourselves. And I said, the best thing I've ever heard about the meaning of life is finding your gift. The purpose is giving it away. Who,
Okay.
who are you?
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to who are you? What do you want? You satisfy those. It's not as mysterious as you might think. You work with somebody, you get a guide to show you, and your life will become different. And then what happens is, think of it this way. If all those are in alignment, then the prosperity which I'm seeking, all those things in my life are going to show up. They have to. I'm
Mm-hmm.
aligned. Because why? There's no resistance. I'm inspired. My belief matches my desire. I'm inspired, and it has to happen over time. And it's going to happen in its own way. Once you get out of the way and let the universe do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a process you need to learn. So it's essentially kind of relearning how to live your life, but it's not. Well, when I first tell people about that, and I have an 8-week course I go through, do workshops. When they go through it at the beginning, they say, "Wow, I say, I'm going to tell you what. At the end of this, it is all going to come together." And they all say that. Oh my God, this all makes so much sense now. I said, "Yeah."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah, you had to go through these experiences to get there." It's almost like in the Karate Kid, where the guy teaches Daniel how to do all these things, where he teaches wax on, wax. Why am I painting you? Why am I doing all these sort of things?
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't, Mr. Miyagi doesn't give him the answer right away. And it's a similar kind of thing. I said, you have to go through this experience, and then you're going to be amazed at how this pulls together and that you understand it. You were telling me, because I tell people, tell me what this is like. What this is. What is it? Tell me this experience. And they go on to explaining it. I said, you got it. That's it. And
Yeah.
then they put it into action in your life, and then things start to change. Then you've created a new identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rick. Our hour is going to the end as well, but we
Yeah.
got a lot of good information out for viewers. I believe everybody agrees that we got a lot of information out and a lot of tools and all kinds of things. And if you need guidance and everything, reach out to Rick as well for the program that he has. So, but for to end up the session, I always ask all the guests the same few questions. And first one is, what is happiness for you, Rick? Specifically for you, not for what it's for other people, what you teach to other people, but
Mhm.
you, like you say, everybody is individualistic.
Right.
What is your happiness?
Well, mine is just what I teach other people. It's like getting clear on who I am, what I want. I look at my career, who I am, what I want. I know all about that. I'm looking at my finances. I have goals. I have different ones that I set. I'm looking at the relationships. I know who I like in my life. I look at my personal physical life, and I've made the changes where I'm happy with that. I look at my spiritual life. I have a spiritual program. I work on myself more than anybody, probably 2 hours a day every day, and I enjoy it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially, in a sentence, I'm living my authentic self internally and who I believe, not listening to the external world.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And now this one, what is few activities
Mhm.
or items, really simple everyday things that bring out happy feeling on you?
Oh,
Something really simple.
something simple is how I think start my day. I think how you start your day sets the tone. So a very simple thing is I get the right amount of sleep. First of all, let's start from the beginning. I get the right amount of sleep. I get up at a certain time, and I meditate. Meditation is essential in my morning, because what that does is that clears the mind, gets rid of resistant thought, so I can allow the right ones to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 20-minute thing. I listen to actually a sound. I listen actually to an air conditioner sound. But the point is, you want to quiet the mind. And so I think that's a very simple process, is getting enough sleep, getting up in the morning. You certainly want to hydrate in the morning
Mm-hmm.
as well. And I start the day with meditation, not starting the day on the phone. Here's the trick. If you start the day by reliving what happened yesterday, well, I got this email, I got this problem I'm going to deal with. Oh, I saw this text. This is what happens, is that takes you into a different place. There's very few emergencies in life where I need to, you could look at your phone real quick. Do you see anything that there's 11 messages and something you need to deal with? Very rare. What
Mm-hmm.
happens is, if you get up in the morning, don't even look at your phone. Don't even do that. Get up in the morning, get a good night's sleep, give a 20-minute meditation. You start your day. It's a very simple and powerful process. I know I live it every day.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. Before we're gonna end, Rick, do you want to say something for the end thoughts or conclusions?
Well, I would just say to anybody who's having any thoughts of that, I want to make some changes, but I'm not sure what to do. I don't know. how to do this. I kind of feel one of the words I often hear people says, I'm lost, I'm confused. I said, fine, that's exactly what I do. If you're interested, let's have a conversation. Go to the email, fill it out. You give me we could talk on the phone. And the point is, you've lost nothing. But you have to think of it this way: you have two choices. I can live my life now how as it is, or can learn how to use everything I have in me. You have what you need. You already have what you need to have a different life and a different identity. And you have to make that decision. So I encourage people to at least look into it.
Mm-hmm. And create, that's the thing. We have to know ourselves to
Right.
create a happy life for ourselves,
Yes.
for a man.
For
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. That's
Mm-hmm.
very important point. So, yeah, I want to thank you for this time. I appreciate the experience of being able to have this conversation with you. And thanks again. And look forward to talk with anybody who may be interested.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, all the viewers, and enjoy all the information that you know. Apply it. Don't just take it as information. Actually, apply it to your life. So we're gonna end with that. Apply all the information that you heard in your life. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, all the
Bye-bye.
viewers. Bye.